Hi there, my name is George Hurst. I've been doing leathercraft for many, many years. I've made hundreds, maybe even thousands of items for myself, for family, for friends, and for coworkers. My love of leathercraft started in high school, but it really blossomed when my new wife bought me a starter kit much like this one for Christmas one year. And I've been doing leathercraft ever since. I would like to take this opportunity to show you how to get started in leathercraft. It all starts with a beginner's kit and a nice place to work. Here I've got a nice sturdy table and I've got good light all around so I can see. And I've got a piece of granite here which is very, very helpful. So let's get started by doing some basic stamping on a key fob. With all leather tooling, the first thing we need to do is dampen this vegetable tan leather. You'll notice as I hit it with a damp sponge, the water soaks in immediately. So to do tooling, we'll need to get a good bit of water on here, but don't soak it. Just dampen it so that it's nice and damp all the way through. Then we'll set it aside for a minute or two until it returns to its natural color. The first tool I'm going to use here is called a camouflage tool. I'm going to use that to create a nice border on this key fob. I'll hold it, in this case, a little more than 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. And by tapping it with the mallet, you'll see I get a nice impression. The reason we're getting a nice color with this stamping is that we have the proper moisture content. We want it to be damp, but not soggy. And we'll continue going all the way around the project just like this. The next tool I'm going to use is called a pear shader. It looks like a pear, that's why we call it a pear shader. I'm going to use it to put some more decoration on the edge of this key fob. It gives it a scalloped look. Notice I'm tipping the tool forward just a little bit. We will show you how to do this later, but if you notice how nice this one is, this one was stamped the same way and we put an initial in there. We'll show you later how to do this finish. The next project I'm going to do is a coaster. I'm going to do these little daisies as you see here. Now I've already stamped the border with the camouflage stamp. I'm going to use the cedar and the background tool to make the daisies. All I'll do is take my cedar and locate one on each of the 4 quadrants as you see me doing it here. This is a sharp tool, so don't hit it too hard. It'll go all the way through. Now we'll take the background tool, do one, turn it, do another one, do one here, and another one here. Now we can fill in Now we'll do the other 3 just like this. We're going to now introduce you to the swivel knife. You'll notice here it's got a barrel in the yoke and it turns. That's why we call it a swivel knife. So the first thing we need to do is get it a little sharp. When it comes with the kit, it really needs some work. So I've got a piece of thin cardboard here and some jeweler's rouge that comes with the kit. I'm just rubbing the jeweler's rouge onto the cardboard. Now I'll take the knife and I can feel it and I can find the angle of the blade, because what I want to do is make it nice and polished and shiny on the side. So I'll pull it, lift up, pull, lift up. Notice how it's getting dark on there? That dark is actually metal that's coming off the blade. So we'll keep doing it until it's nice and shiny on both sides, as this is. Now we're going to tip the knife forward, sink it in, twist and pull, and we'll make an arc on there. To make some leaves, we'll just make a couple more small arcs. As you see me doing here. Put another stem here, another leaf. And that's all there is to making a real nice pattern of daisies and leaves on this coaster. Now it's time to do the billfold. And to do the billfold, I would like to do a traditional Western leather floral carving. Let us show you how to do that. First thing we'll do, we have our billfold back from the kit. We'll lay that on the tracing film. I'll take a pencil and go around the billfold back. Now I know exactly what my boundaries are. I'll take the pattern that comes with the kit and we'll locate this exactly over the pattern. Now, at this point in time, you can take a little piece of Scotch tape and secure it. This will make it easier to trace it, and it'll stay in place. I like to start with the flower and trace all of these lines as you see them on the pattern. As I finish my tracing, I can lift it up and make sure I got everything, and it looks like I did, so we can go on to the next step. To start this billfold project, I have the back or the outside, and I want to glue this to a piece of cardboard. The reason I'm doing that is to prevent stretch, because we want to make sure all these holes match up after we're finished stamping on here, and also it'll allow us to stamp a little deeper. So I'll just very carefully cover the back of this. Now be careful when you get to these holes. We don't want any glue going through the holes and onto the front of the leather. So we're going to make sure we go kind of dry when we get to the holes. And we'll just cover this entire back. As soon as you get all this cement on here and before it dries, you put it on one side only and then put it over onto the cardboard and press it down. Now we're ready to apply water. Just like we did with the key fob, we want to get a goodly amount of water so that it soaks in quite well. But this being thin leather, we don't want to get too soggy. So now we'll put this aside until it starts to return to its natural color. I'm now ready to trace. We've let our leather get back to almost its natural color. I have taped this tracing on there so that I can lift it up and check it. And be careful not to get tape on your leather. So now I'll just take my pencil and I'll go over these lines again. Now after you do the first line, check it, yes, There it is. It's real easy to see. You don't have to go real deep, just deep enough so you can see it. And we will now trace every line that was on there from our tracing. As you can see, I'm stropping my knife. You should do that every time you pick it up. And now we're going to, with the swivel knife, cut all of these lines that we had on our pattern. We'll first very carefully cut the border lines. And we'll do the flower next. I like to do the flower first, and then I do all the leaves and stems. Every time your knife begins to drag a little bit, strop it. Like right now, it's beginning to drag, so I'll bring in my strop, strop it a few times, go back to cutting. As I finish up, I want to show you that I did not cut that little thing for the seed pod, because that's where we'll cut that with the seeder. And this is what it should look like when you do your cutting. I'm going to use this camouflage tool again. Now this time we'll use it to deepen the ends of those fern swirls. I'll tip it to one side, as you can see, and drive it in fairly deep. I'll also use it on the edges of some of these stems to give it some roundness. You notice I'm leaning again, mostly back toward my body. You can consult the pattern that comes with this kit to find out where we're using this tool. This is how your pattern should look after we've used the camouflage tool. Next tool I'm going to use is the pear shader again. Now this time we'll use it to do some contour and add some color to the leaves and flowers. I'm kind of holding it just lightly, and as I hit it, it'll sort of bounce, and as it bounces I can move it in the direction that I want. And this is how it will look after you've done your pear shading. The next tool we're going to use is the beveler. Now you'll notice that the beveler is longer on one side than the other. By placing it in the cut and tapping it, it will cause a tapered effect that will make part of the design stand up. So we're going to kind of walk this. Notice I'm tapping, and as it kind of rebounds, I can nudge it in the direction I want to go, and you'll see how now this the bottom part of this flower is beginning to raise up. And we'll do one of these petals up here. If you cannot figure out which side of the line to bevel, consult the pattern sheet that came with the kit, and you'll be able to see which line or which side of the line to bevel on. And this is what your carving should look like to this point after we've done the beveling. The tool I'm going to use now is called the veiner, and we'll take it and do this fern swirl here. Like we did with the camouflage tool, I'm going to tip it to one side and only use a partial impression of the tool. Here again, this tool, once we tip it, is rather sharp, so be a little careful, and as you go around, make sure that you kind of flow and keep the same angle as you're going around the outer perimeter of this fern swirl. Now we'll also do the same thing to this other fern swirl we have here. We'll also use the veiner to accentuate the ends of these cuts to make it look like a fold. So we'll do the same thing right here. And this is what we look like after we've used the veiner. I'm now going to use the seeder tool, and it looks just like a small seed. I'm going to use it at the end of these fern swirls, and I'm also going to use it to create a seed pod here in the flower. Now, that line we had that we didn't cut, we're going to use that as a guideline and just do the outer row of these seeds. And that's all there is to that. You notice I've dropped my knife again. Now we're going to do the decorative cuts. And remember when we first started, the leather was nice and smooth. Well, now it's kind of bumpy because of all this stamping we did in here. So you're going to have to hold on to your knife a little bit more so that it doesn't follow the contour of the leather. So be a little aware of that, and you'll make nice decorative cuts. They're made pretty much like we did the original cuts. This is how your carving should look after you've done the decorative cuts. The last stamping tool we're going to use is the background tool, and you'll notice that it's also kind of pointed on one end and rounded on the other. That's so we can fit it in these areas. Like the pear shader, we can sort of walk it and you'll see now that by doing the background, it really causes the flower to stand out in bold relief. Now, we can go over this as often as we want so that it gets nice and smooth. And you may have to do that. Go over it several times to get the effect you're looking for. Turn it as you need to fit these pointed areas. We've finished now with all of our backgrounding, and as you can see now it really stands out in bold relief. Now we can move on to doing some dyeing and finishing. You know, there are many ways to color and finish leather. Here are a few ideas for you. I'd like to get started by showing you how to do this billfold back. To do that billfold back, the first thing I'm going to do is take some EcoFlow dye and dye the background. Now you'll notice as I come in here with the loaded dye brush, I start in the middle because immediately when you touch the leather with your brush, a lot of the dye will flow out immediately. So what you do is take some off on the edge of the bottle, come down in an open area as I'm doing here, and then slowly work up to the border lines. Then as you brush gets even drier, you can come over here and go in these pointed areas. And be careful. It's always better to have less dye than more. You can always put more dye on, but once you make a mistake, it's almost difficult to get rid of any excess dye. I want to tell you again, it's very important to start your dyeing in an open area as you see me doing here, and then slowly work up to the borders, and as it gets dry you go into the pointed areas very carefully. This is what your piece should look like at this point in time. We'll now put it aside to dry, and then we'll apply some super sheen finish to it. On the table in front of me I have some examples of the finished products that we're making today. I also have the products that we are working on. I'd like to start with the key fob and show you how we took some super sheen and we put it around the edge as you see here, and I did some super sheen also on the edge here and on the center. And you'll notice here we also used some super sheen on parts of the coin purse. This will act as a resist when we come back later with a highlighter. The highlighter will give us the antique look, or the contrasting colors. And as you remember, we used on the billfold some EcoFlow dye. That's what we've used here on the key fob. To get the three-tone effect on this key fob that you see here, I first, of course, did some dye, as you see on the K, and next I'm going to use the EcoFlow Super Sheen. I've put some in the cap here, and I'm going to very carefully now paint the edge. Being very careful not to get on to the center part, because when we apply the highlighter, everything that we have painted this super sheen on will remain light. Everything else will get the nice brown tone that you saw in the sample. So we will very carefully now paint everything on this edge. To get the look we want on the coin purse, I'm going to use the EcoFlow Super Sheen as an overall resist. To do that, I've got some on a damp sponge, and I'll just rub it over the surface as you see here, making sure that I get down in all the cuts and impressions. Now, like all the other things, we'll put this aside to dry overnight. Well, we've got everything prepared now for the final finish. For that, we'll use the highlighter stain. If you remember, on the billfold back, we just did a straight clear finish. We also put some of the clear finish, the super sheen, onto the back part of the coin purse, as well as on these edges. On the coaster we did the same thing. We put some here and in the center. Now what we're going to do is apply the highlighter to all of these, and you'll notice the effects that we achieve. You'll notice, in addition to the EcoFlow highlighter, I also have a piece of dampened sponge and a pad made out of a paper towel. So let me put some of this highlighter on my sponge, and we'll just rub it on as you see me doing here, making sure I get down in all the impressions. And then I'll come back with my paper towel and wipe. And you can see that we get a beautiful three-tone finish. We'll come back later and give this another application of leather sheen after it has dried overnight. We can also use this sponge and color the edge of our key fob. We will now do the same thing to the front of the coin purse. Same technique. We will do the edges and come back with the paper towel and rub. Get all of the excess off. Now, the other piece of the coin purse, if you recall, we gave it an overall coating of the super sheen to serve as an overall resist. Now what we'll do here, we'll take some more of the highlighter. We'll go over the entire piece. And what this will do, it will darken all of the cuts and tool impressions, but it will not darken the whole piece. As you can see, now it causes the flower to stand out in bold relief. We're now going to put finish on the money clip. Keep in mind now, we haven't done anything to this. No resist, no dye, nothing. So what we'll do now is we'll apply our highlighter to that, and you'll notice that we get a nice deep color all the way around on this one. Make sure you get down in all the cuts and depressions. And we just wipe it off, and we have a beautiful piece. Now we're going to do the coaster, and as you can see, it's pretty plain right now. Of course, if you remember, we put some leather sheen on the center and on the border. So let's see what happens when we put the highlighter on this piece. Making sure I get down in all the depressions. And immediately wipe it off with the paper towel. And we get this beautiful two-tone finish. And that's all there is to the finishing. Let's now get into doing some assembly. Here are the things we need to assemble the money clip. We have the outside piece with the tooling, the lining piece, and the magnets, as well as thread and needle. So we'll start by using our cement, and we'll coat the back of the outside piece that has the tooling on it. We'll coat it completely because not only will we cement the magnets in place, we'll also cement the lining to this piece as well. Now we'll take the two magnets, making sure that they oppose each other, and set them in place as you see here on either end. Now we can take the other piece and we will completely cover it with cement. After we get this covered, then we can set it aside for a few minutes till the cement dries until it's tacky, and then we'll stick it together. We have allowed our cement to dry until it got tacky, and now we can very carefully line up the holes and stick the two pieces together. Might want to start with the four corners, and if everything gets lined up there, then the rest of it should fall into place. And now we're ready to stitch. It doesn't much matter where you start. We'll start from the inside and go out, as you see here. Now we'll just pull the lace up, leaving about 6 inches or so, and we'll go down through the next hole, up through the next, and we'll go in and out all the way around. After you come all the way around to the beginning, you go through that last open hole, and then you can go up through the next hole where you started with the first stitch, and now we can go back in the other direction and fill in all of the stitches in between. And we'll do this all the way back to the beginning. If you need help, just refer to the instruction sheet that came with the kit. As we come back to the beginning, we'll go through that last hole, and then we will go through the next couple of holes and double it up. This will secure the end of our stitching. And 2, and 1 more, 3. Now all we got to do is take a knife or shears and cut off the ends, and our money clip is ready to use. To assemble the key fob is quite simple. We have the split key ring. We just put the leather through the key ring, as you see here. There's a rivet with a post that we put up through the bottom. As you can see, the post sticks through the top. We'll put the cap on here and tap it with a tack hammer turn it over and got more on the back, and that's all there is to assembling our key fob. Now we're going to assemble the little coin purse. We'll take the cement and we'll put about 1/8 of an inch maybe of cement around the edges. We'll do that to both the front piece and this back piece. And we'll set them aside to dry until they get tacky. I have allowed this cement to dry until it's tacky, and I'm going to carefully line up the holes and stick it together. And now we're ready for stitching. After you have attached the needle, we're going to go through the first hole here on one side, as you see me doing here. Pull it up and leave an inch or so of lace, and we'll fold that over, as you see me doing there, and go through the second hole, throwing the lace over. You'll notice I'm letting the lace hold the other end. We'll hold it right there. Now we'll go through the third hole, and we do the same thing. After we come all the way around and we go through that last hole, then just bring it up and put this lace down through a couple of stitches, as you see me doing here, and then pull it out. And at this point you can take a shears or a knife and trim it off, and our nifty little coin purse is ready to use. We first have to assemble the inside. I have the parts laying out here the way they'll go together. You have the back lining piece, the larger pocket, and a smaller pocket on one side, and you have the same thing on the other side. First thing to do is to stitch these pieces together on the top only on these pieces. To make life easier, I have cemented the pieces together here just on the top edge only, and now I'm going to start in the second hole here, not the first hole, but the second hole, and I'll do a whip stitch just like we did with the coin purse. Leave about an inch, fold it over, and go to the next hole. Because this leather is rather thin, we want to pull this lace up snug but not real tight. If we pull it too tight, then it will cause the leather to pucker, and we don't need that. We want it to remain nice and flat. I have used about 1 yard of lace to do this. And we're going across the top only. We're just assembling the inside now. We'll assemble this to the outside when we get this stitched across the top. As we come up to the next to last hole here, we go through that hole from front to back, and then as we did with the coin purse, you take the end and tuck it in behind 3 or 4 stitches, and then we cut that off to secure it. Now if you want, you can tap this down with your mallet. That will make all the parts lay a little more flat. Please note that I have taken this top strip and stitched the two corners in place temporarily. I'll do the same thing now with the inside assembly. I'll stitch it to the bottom two corners, and then we can start to do our lacing. As you notice, I have tied the corners so that everything is in place, and now I'll line up my holes and begin stitching by going with my needle from front to back. I'll roll it over and go through the next hole, and now I'll go through this loop, as you can see here. Now, after I go through that loop, I'll pull it up snug. I'll go through the next hole. Sometimes you have to do a little fishing to get through those holes. Here again, pull it up snug. Now, you'll see I have a cross. And from here on, every time you go through a cross, then you go through a hole the next time. So from now on, it's through a hole, through a cross, through a hole, and continue this way until you get to the corner. When we reach the corner, we'll go through that corner hole one time, and as always, we go back through the cross. Go back through the cross. Now, at this time, it's a good idea to take your stylus and enlarge that hole some, because we're going to go through that same hole again. Now, as usual, make our lace snug, go back through the cross, never break that rule, and then go on to the first hole on the side. Now, we go back through the cross. Now, after we get through there, now we go through the same hole again. Once more, we may need to take the stylus and enlarge that hole so it makes it easier for the needle to go through. And once it's through, then we go back through the cross, and we continue lacing. I have reached the center on my lacing of the billfold. Now, you'll notice I have turned it around so you could see the inside. There is an opening here in the center. That's because the inner piece is not as long as the back piece. Now, to get everything to become equal, we will go through 7 holes on the inside here, as you see me doing. And then we will do that with the one thickness only. And after we go through 7 stitches of one only, then we will pick up the 8th stitch. We will pick up the other parts over here. But for now, we're going to go through 7 holes. We have gone through the 7 holes with the one thickness, and now we're picking up the other thicknesses of the lining. And as So we just go through that first hole. As always, we go through the cross. We come to the next hole and work everything through, and we continue lacing just like this all the way around. As we come around the opposite end from where we started and we get near the top, at the third hole down, we'll need to pick up the top strip. Check your instructions to see exactly how to go about this, and then we can continue lacing, and we'll go around this corner the same way we went around the other corners. As you go through that corner hole now, you'll only be going through the top strip and the outside piece. You'll no longer be catching the inside assembly. And always, always go back through the cross. We're now ready to finish the lacing. I would suggest that you look in your manual to the page that shows the double loop lacing, and we'll show you briefly here how I would finish it. You notice I have removed a few stitches. I've left this piece come to the front. Now I'm going to take my lace and go through that last open hole. Now as I do, I'll pull it up snug as we always do. I'll go up through the loop that we left there, and we'll go back through the cross. We always go back through the cross. Pull this up snug, and we'll go down through the loop to the outside. Now all we need to do is take these two ends and tuck them into that last hole in between the layers of leather. After you have finished lacing, it's a good idea to take your mallet and tap this lace down nice and flat. Gives a much nicer and smoother appearance that way. Now you can see that we are finished with our billfold and it's all ready to use. My name is George Hurst, and it's sure been a pleasure working with you today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again on a video about leathercraft.